So with all of these UFOs that you're capturing right now, what are these ships doing?
If you look at the disclosure stuff that is coming out in Washington now, with like David Grush and others who are talking about, biologics and crafts and things like that, all of the major media are asking, like, are we alone in the universe? It's so stupid.
I know.
Nobody's asking the question that you just asked. What are they doing? Yeah, literally nobody's saying, okay, well, what are they doing? If there's extraterrestrials, what are they doing? And nobody's asking that, but it's a really good question. So almost all of the video recordings we have are of the bad guys, and they're doing management stuff for a prison. This is still their prison as far as they're concerned. This is their turf, and the entire population are their slaves, and they own them. And that's what's going on. And everything is going on just the same way it used to be going on. There's been nobody that came in and threw the bad guys out. It's like ridiculous. It's like nothing like that's happened. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. All the bad guys are still here. This is their planet. They still have the active agreements with the U.S. military. They still have the underground bases, everything. They're still heavily involved in the abduction phenomena. Look, the major forms of money making on the planet Earth, number one, human trafficking.
Yeah.
Number two, drugs. Number three, weapons sales. If you look at where the flow of money is, okay, you've got like restaurants and pizzerias and things like that. But in terms of major flow of money, it's human trafficking, drugs, and weapons sales. The bad guys, ETs, the bad ETs, they're the lead most major player in the human trafficking element. And in fact, they're also major players in the drug element. So if you look at the United States, for example, the United States is one of those heavily drugged up countries in the world. You have huge numbers of people that are anesthetized. They have a tough day. They come home, they get a blunt, they take the reefer out, they smoke, they chill out. If those people didn't have drugs to sort of calm them down, chill them out, they'd be rioting on the streets based on what's going on in the world right now. And that's exactly what the prison authorities don't want. So they drug them up, give them recreational drugs that are in fact ways to sort of chill them out and stop the rebellion. The older people are filled up with opioids. So the whole situation is just a disaster. But this is a prison. You have to understand that the Earth is not metaphorically, it's a literal prison. When people die, they don't even get out. So it's like if you look at the former Soviet Union or China under Mao Zedong, if people were born in those countries, they couldn't get out. So you get ballet dancers like Rudolf Nureyev and Bershnikov. They got out by escaping when the troupe, the ballet troupe coming out of Moscow, would have to, under guard, travel from the gate to the aircraft to take them back to Russia, to the Soviet Union. And like they'd make a run for it, run through the guards and then scream, "I want asylum." That's how Rudolf Nureyev came out. That's how Mikhail Baryshnikov came out. People couldn't get out. Well, that's how the prison systems are run. Death used to be a means of transportation. You die, you leave the body, and you say, well, this wasn't so good, and you go somewhere else. But they have traps. So the prison population gets recycled back in. And we commonly call it reincarnation, but it's part of the prison system to recycle people back in.
So I just want to make sure I got one thing right here before we finish this amazing podcast up, and I'd love to have you back. So you were saying a moment ago about how people would basically, or beings would live so long and it'd be so powerful that they had to trap them. So they would like somehow trap them on Earth.
That's another project that we have. We've adjusted in a number of projects, but the big project is called the Death Traps. And the Death Traps, the full show is on farsightprime.com. The Death Traps is one of the most riveting things you've ever seen. But this is what it is. This is technology that's been used all over the whole galaxy and wherever the authoritarians set up shop, but it's really been dominant on Earth. What happens is after your physical body dies, you pop out. Now, in free will places, when you pop out, you don't lose your memory. In fact, you don't even lose your stuff. They know that the body is just a vehicle. You get to keep your house, you get to keep your friends, you get to keep your money, your bank account is still there. You can get a new body, and then you start over. You get to say, and you get to keep everything. But in the way the system is now, when you die, when your physical body dies, your ISB, which is you, pops out, and you see the light. You've heard about that, right? You see the light. The ISBs are attracted to aesthetic things. So they're drawn to the light, like a moth is drawn to the light. And then once you get closer and closer, it gets sticky. And the more you fight, you can't get out. And then it sucks you in. And then what happens is you're exposed to extremely high voltage, like way higher than 1 billion volts. I mean, it's like bigger than any lightning bolt. I mean, it's really, you cannot kill an ISB, but you can rattle it and you can trap it. And what happens is they lose the ability to use telepathy. Telepathy is the normal means of communicating in the galaxy. So if you're on an ET ship and they want to say, tell the pilot to go left, they don't speak it in English. They telepathically communicate. All of that happens. And all of the abduction research clearly talks about ETs communicating telepathically. That's the dominant way. Well, once you're zapped by these things we call the death traps, you can't, you lose that. And also you lose the perceptual ability that we call remote viewing, which is a normal thing for people that you shouldn't have to train to do that. That should be natural. And once you lose your telepathy capabilities and remote viewing perceptions, you also lose your memory. You become like someone who's been exposed to excessive shock treatments, like in a psychiatric place with electroshock treatment. Okay. And then it's all done by AI now. There's not like people doing it. Then they come in and you get exposed to the Council of Elders. And you get a whole bunch of memories coming back in that they feed in, and they say, we think you have a few more things you need to work out in the lifetime. There's a few more personality issues. Don't you see I had trouble with this and trouble with that? You need to struggle. Don't you think you need to go back? And then you regretfully say, oh, I guess I do. So you lose your memory of who you did, who you were, what you had. And you have all these new memories being fed in. And then the Council of Elders that seems so kind suggests that you go back to work out a few more issues. And then back you plop into a body. Now, if it was a near-death experience, you go back into your regular body. If it's an other experience, you go back into a body of a baby and you start all over again. Rex, you've been around for billions of years, millions of years. You've had so many lifetimes. What the heck do you need another lifetime to work out a few bugs? There's no bugs you need to work out. Yeah, what is one more lifetime? You have been around 1 million years, 1 million lifetimes. What do you need another lifetime to work out? It's crazy. It's the people who set up the prison system. They're the ones who need to go to prison. It goes. So the point is that's how the cycling system works. Starting a couple 1,500 years ago, 1,000 years, actually starting back in the pyramid days. So that's when it first started. There were some military interactions between the different groups, and some of the death trap machinery got weakened. So it's not working quite as efficiently as it used to be. That's why we have the resurgence of modern society with technology, with computer stuff, your cell phones and stuff like this and things like that. And that's also why we have modern architecture that doesn't look like pyramids, big triangular buildings of pyramids that are totally useless. You can't house anybody in them. And so now we have skyscrapers that you can put people in, and it's modern cities. That's the type of architecture that they have elsewhere in the galaxy. So we're starting to remember things. That's how things are starting to sort of come back. And what we have now is a situation where there's partial memory recovery. And now we're having people starting to study telepathy and remote viewing. Some of that is starting to come back. And now we're starting to question where are the UFOs, and we're able to see them now. But if you look at all the technological advances that have happened over the last 40 years, with these cell phones and computers and everything, you can't invent that stuff that quickly. If it's completely out of whole cloth, I mean, it takes hundreds and hundreds of years to slowly put everything together. So the reverse engineering ET stuff that has been from crashed ships and stuff like that, and that's how some of this stuff is happening so rapidly. So what we have now is a situation where it's an ideal time to have disclosure, if we can get it, if we can do it, if we can trigger it, and then have everything sort of rise up at the same time. So that's the experiment. That's what we're trying to do right now. And we have a lot at stake. You have no idea. A lot of the free will ETs, like so many of them, they have friends and relatives that are here.
I think this is the most crucial thing. So when we die and we start going towards the light, like I know John Lear talked about it, a lot of people talk about it. What do you do? I mean, does anybody know? Do we just, if we're going towards the light, if our etheric body is projecting up towards this light, it's like maybe it's like a tractor beam, it's like pulling us in. Do you kind of turn your etheric body around and go the other way? I've heard people say that if you turn around, you'll see the universe, and then you can just kind of go on your merry way, and you have new experiences.
The basic thing with the light is you don't go into the light. As soon as you see it, go the other direction. The light is a trap. It's just like a moth. A moth is attracted to the light, even if the light ends up burning them. But the light is not a good thing. It's part of what we call the death traps. Now, we have a whole project on the death traps on farsightprime.com. So if you want to see what happens, there it is. We had remote viewers follow people after death right into the death traps so we could see what's going on. We have another one called The Escape, which we investigated exactly the question you're asked, how to avoid that. The good ETs are, however, making a strong effort to rescue people, but they have, because they do have extra capacity to do that, but they can't rescue people from the death traps if the people do not follow or know that the ETs exist and do not involve with the disclosure thing. So your program is actually helping with that as well. Because if you go to somebody who doesn't know squat about the UFOs or the aliens or anything like that, and they die, and the good ETs show up and say, "Come on, you're coming with us," they would think they're being kidnapped. I mean, yeah. They would think they're being attacked, and so you can't help those people. However, if they're exposed to the disclosure stuff and they've been hearing all of this stuff and they've watched all the projects that we have and they sort of know the story, then when they die, they're expecting help. And the good ETs have told us point blank that they have extra capacity to help lots more people and to collect them before they go into the light. But they have to be willing and looking out for them. They have to know about this whole thing. So, that's the same, that the work with the ETs, the good ETs, they fundamentally believe in free will. They're not going to go in and pull somebody out who doesn't want them to be pulled out, who wants to be sucked into the light. They'll say, okay, what can we do?
Earth has long been a planet that has been operated as a prison. And I mean this literally, not as a metaphor for something else. People who live here were mostly dumped here from somewhere else, from other planets on other star systems within our own galaxy, and possibly some star systems in other nearby galaxies. They get dumped here by being born here. They lose all their memories of who they were in the past, where they came from, who their families are and were, and they don't remember the property that they owned that was taken from them.
He does not know who he is, who he was. This dude is lost. Like, he started to calm down and remember stuff, but then when that electricity happened, it's like it tossed him out.
Everyone is processed in a way that erases all such memories. And the key to running this prison has always been from the beginning to suppress all knowledge of every prisoner's past.
And it doesn't feel like he remembers who he was or who he used to be. It feels like a blank slate now, like there's no substance to him.
And when people die on Earth, a technique was established to involuntarily recycle them back into another life on this planet, memory-free, so that they could never leave. Dying offers no escape from this place.
And I sense numbness and booming sounds and lots of roaring, like an explosion happened. And there's lots of loud noises and chaos and shaking, like a rumble, shaking, and just strong energetics being placed upon the structure. There's lots of electricity and frequency sounds are coming from something. There's huge amounts of shaking. And pain. And screaming.
While it is impossible to show you everything related to the prison planet idea in only one video, we can manageably focus on the method used to erase people's memories after they die. It is a process that is so cruel, so barbaric, and yet so unbelievable, it is best to show you rather than tell you. I will ask you to be patient as I step you through how it is done. Any hope of escaping from this prison will depend on understanding the workings of the death traps.
One of these guys are absolutely not nice. Like the other two are almost neutral, but more bad than good. But this one guy, like, he's got this triangular-ish esque shape. He's not nice at all. He's mean. He's bad. He's bad. Very cunning and bad. He's bad energy, mean, not nice.
Specifically, the subject just can't remember things, so he's going in a loop. It's a continuous loop of being in a specific place and in a specific event and reliving that memory over and over and over again.
I just hear a lot of loud noises and shouting, and it just sounds like constant screaming and yelling all the time. Like it's like someone is constantly being tortured here. It sounds like hell.
Kind of like a person who just has amnesia and they're trying their best to remember something that they try to forget, or they completely always forget, or they can't control that they're forgetting, so they try to remember over and over and over and over again.
Okay, after death we have the magnetic draw towards pathways or doorways, an electroshock experience, and finally a state of amnesia. It also seems as if false memories may be inserted into the subjects at that point, a clean slate. Why would a prison be set up to do this? Well, it all begins with an understanding that it is impossible to kill a soul.
They created this to demolish his larger spiritual self because he was powerful? Can this be stopped?
There is no such thing as capital punishment on the level of a soul. So if a society wants to get rid of someone that they don't want around, you can't just kill the person. The only way to really get rid of the person is to dump the person onto a planet with a soul recycler system, one that eradicates the individual's memories so that the person does not come back. Then one could let such a person get caught up in the recycler system for thousands of years.
It feels like they're not in control of their mental state anymore. Someone or something is forcing them to relive these experiences. They just feel like tortured souls.
How hard will it be to convince many people that such death traps even exist when they don't have any memories of anything before their current lives?
And he just feels like a zombie. He just feels like...
If the society acknowledges anything about remote viewing or the extraterrestrials, then the entire house of cards is in danger of collapsing. Once you acknowledge the existence of the extraterrestrials, then the next question is to ask, what have they been doing all this time? And what is our history in relation to their history?
and they picked apart the things that made him feel good and calm and created this false environment that they knew he'd go towards, and then just darkness. And now he's lost and at war with himself and with his ex-life, with darkness. Like, none of that is fair. That's not fair.
This means that if humans are to ever break out of this prison, they have to rely on themselves to know what is real and what is not real. They can't simply wait to be rescued. No one is coming to rescue us. There is no cavalry. We start dismantling the prison system by waking up, by remembering who we really are, who we were, and who we need to become, one person at a time.
It's clear that genes can convey ways of thinking. So if you're an advanced extraterrestrial race and you're going to be introducing a new species of humanity onto the planet, you know, that's open game. Well, let's see what they can do. So I think the resistance to these types of new ideas is probably genetically built in. And I think also the UFO disclosure issue is partially genetically built in as well. Otherwise, it'd be hard to, given the amount of content, the amount of UFO disclosure information that's out there, it's really hard to figure out how 8 billion people could continue to keep their heads in the sand. So it looks like the genetics is set up to have it work out that way. Otherwise, keeping everybody sort of dumbed down would be I think it would be impossible unless there was some type of genetic underpinning towards it. Now, I don't have any way to prove that, but since we do know about the issue with twins and party and political ideology, then it makes sense that an advanced species that would be intervening and changing humanity along the way, they would try to control the species in certain ways, and fiddling with the genes in that way seems perfectly okay. They probably also fiddled with the genes to make remote viewing and telepathy more difficult automatically, so that people don't automatically just do this. Otherwise, people would figure out that the whole setup is a ruse right away.
Well, I've sometimes wondered if maybe we aren't supposed to remote view, that as part of our experience in this physical body was to experience it only on this dimension with this, getting input from our physical reality, and that's a leakage, and it's like we're not supposed to be able to do that. Sometimes I wonder that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's part of the. I personally, this is belief now. I personally think that's built into the genes. I think that's what's going on. I think once the geneticists dig into this deep enough, that's what they will find.
So we've outsmarted the game. We outsmarted the system by remote viewing.
But wait a second, there probably had to be some genetic predisposition in you and me and Daz and the other remote viewers we're working with to get them to do this in the first place. So it probably wasn't a perfect genetic fix. It probably was imperfect. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be here.
Well, my view on that is that the DNA is an assembly machine that was created by the ETs. So DNA is this machine that takes the elements from the Earth and can create a Earth suit, a body suit, a meat suit for our souls to come in and have this experience. And that some of our souls come here with a mission, with a plan, with things that they need to do.
That's going to be a little bit of a difference of opinion for us, you and I here, because at Farsight we've gone into this a lot, and we've come to the conclusion that this is a prison, and that the souls don't escape. We don't even call them souls anymore. We call them isbis, someone who is for the purpose of being.
And since it is possible to remote view across time and space anywhere, anytime, any space, obviously our ISB parts exist across time and space. So it's impossible to kill an ISB because we exist everywhere. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see all those things in remote viewing. So the ISBs can't be killed, but they can be controlled. They can be enslaved. They can be manipulated. And everything that we have looked at, and we have a huge number of projects that seem to be pointing in the exact same direction, especially where we've explicitly looked at this exact question, is that people don't come here voluntarily. They're thrown in here, this is a prison, and they can't get out. Death used to be a form of transportation, but that's not the way it is here at this spot. So that's where, but you and I are going to differ on that, but that's okay.
Well, we're not that different. My view is that, my understanding is that we're not gods. We didn't create this. We didn't create the body. We didn't create our soul. We didn't put our soul here. A higher power did that. Somebody with more intelligence and more technology than we have. So I don't call it a prison, but I don't agree with people who say, "Oh, I'm this spiritual being. I chose to be here, and I have the powers of a god." Well, this will be controversial.
We're always controversial, Dick. Go ahead.
I think there are human beings on this earth that are just like place markers. They're just here as props. People that don't really have a purpose, that aren't really furthering the experience for those that have a real mission. Now, on the other hand, I heard of one lady had a near-death experience, and during her near-death experience, Spirit was explaining what happened and said, "Look, every human has value," and she said, "Look at that beggar, that drunk that's laying in the gutter. I mean, what's their value?" And the Spirit showed her that person incarnated rather, and lived that horrid life as a drunken, wretched person, just to let one other soul experience compassion.
This is going to be one of the areas where you and I probably disagree, because what we have done in our Farsight projects, and we've burrowed into this a lot, the death experience starts with someone seeing the light, and the light is actually this is just something that's come out of our projects. The light is actually a very strong wave that pulls the ISB in. And then once they get in, it's like a trap. The more they struggle against it, the more it gets sticky and they can't get out. And then they're zapped with an extremely high voltage something or other that rattles them. And that gets rid of their memories, it gets rid of their telepathy, remote viewing capabilities. They're just empty shells. And then an AI comes in. And artificial intelligence is all computerized and feeds in a whole bunch of memories. And then the AI inevitably says, "Oh, and by the way, we've discussed your case with the Council of Elders. You see the Council of Elders over there? And we think that those few things you need to work on in your personality, like the arguments you used to have with your mother and your son and your daughter is having this problem, we think you should go back and work on a few of these things." Now, with no memories or anything, the person inevitably says, "You're right, I need to do that, let me go back." And so it's a way to sort of recycle people back in. So the story that you just came up with is a perfect example of a type of story that could be told to someone that they're here to learn lessons. But the reality is you exist throughout time and space. That means you've existed. Nobody exists on the planet Earth that hasn't been around for like millions and millions and millions and millions of years. So you don't need to be born back in this place to learn a new lesson. I mean, that whole idea of coming back here to learn a new lesson, that's all prison control propaganda that comes out of these AIs. And then people get born back here and they get recycled and no one gets out. So that's what we have concluded.
So what are you going to do to break that? Are you going to not go to the light when you pass on?
Yeah, you can't go to the light when you get out. You got to get out. And we've been investigating this a lot.
John Lear brought that up. The UFO investigator that passed away not too long ago. He said it's a don't go to the light. It's a trap.
Yeah, the light is a trap. It's the thing that sucks you in. But it's actually a lot more complicated. We have a lot of projects that sort of have focused on this. We have one project called the death traps. That's what we call that whole thing of the light and the electrocution and the whole thing. But this place is being operated as a prison, and it's an extremely valuable resource to a group of extraterrestrials that need all of these ISBs, all of these people in the future. Just imagine, you can't do anything in the galaxy without an ISB animating it. So if you're to expand in the galaxy and have a wartime expansion, you need a bunch of ISBs, millions and billions of them. And this is like an incredible resource. So you have to control them in order to manipulate them to do what they want. And in the future, they're going to need them for everything, for tradespeople, for military resources, mercenaries, prostitutes that are used to service those military people. It's just they're going to need a whole thing, and they're going to have to all march together with sort of a fascist orientation, a totalitarian orientation towards expansion of their system. And the Earth prison system that contains all these people is extremely valuable as a resource, and that's why they're fighting to keep it. That's what we have concluded at Farsight, and that you and I and Daz and the others that we work with were anomalies, and we run the risk of collapsing the entire system, because the system is a psychological prison. It's not a system it's not a prison based on bars, cement and bars and big buildings. It's a psychological prison. So once you get catastrophic disclosure, literally the entire prison falls apart. And that's why there is such a fierce fight to prevent disclosure, because the whole house of cards will collapse. And it's more than just the current Earth governments that are going to have to answer for what's been going on, and the current media is going to have to answer for what's going on. Literally, the controllers, the extraterrestrial controllers that run this place as a prison, they're going to lose control. Everything comes apart. And that's the only way to help humanity. The prison authorities have to be kicked out. That's the only way humans can get out of this
So
place.
based on your understanding of reality and based on your experiences, is this question even within the realm of possibility, i.e., do you believe that we all have past and future incarnations?
I don't.
Okay.
In fact, I was tasked with this one time with, it wound up about 64 different taskings. What's on the other side of death? These were blind sessions. I didn't know that that's what the target was. As a control mechanism, they had me describe the person at a specific time. What I didn't know was it was right before they died. And then move forward 1 hour in time. Now describe the person. I never found a ghost, but only had like 64 different trials. So I don't know. I found that some people go to what I would call heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go to what, for me, would be absolute hell, not as places, but as, as situations for the soul afterwards. Some get reincarnated, and some just quit existing, period.
That's horrifying.
And so, I've come to believe that all of these are possible and probable. I did some follow-up studies once I got feedback on the people, and it didn't seem that their religious beliefs or whatever was what determined whether they go to heaven or hell or get reincarnated or quit existing. So I don't know about that. I just found 4 categories of what happens after death. And, one church will say, no, here's what happens. Everybody else is wrong. Agnostics will say, here's what happens. Everybody else is wrong. everybody's wrong in thinking that theirs is the only way.
Mhm. Did you find any correlation between the way the person lived their life and what the outcome was, or did it appear to be completely random?
I really didn't. Of course, what you have is the reports of how the person lived. So, whether they had a secret life and secret sins and all that, I have no idea.
Right.
You know,
And how would you describe like the cease to exist? They just wink out, gone?
yeah, they were just gone.
What about what you saw as a conception of of hell?
It was a place of absolute darkness and horror. And usually when I got one of those, I would wind up having nightmares for weeks afterwards. Just an instantaneous thing that just closed the session down and made me just recoil. And I would start having nightmares and all that. So absolute total horror. Ones that I would call heaven was just different people would wind up in places where they were just happy as they could be. Some with loved ones, some not with loved ones, and so on. As far as the reincarnation, almost every one of them I found reincarnated into a young child of about 12 or 13 years old.
Say more.
Not as a baby.
Yeah, say more. How does that work?
Well, the only thing I know is that most cultures have that coming of age thing, around 12 or 13 years old, where now you're a real person. And each one of these that I found that reincarnated did reincarnate into preteen child. Now, there are stories, of course, of babies being born who, at age of 1 or 2 or 5 or something like that, recount past life stories. So, like I say, I had a small sampling. I didn't have hundreds of these sessions.
Anything about it that disturbed you? I mean, hell, you kind of explained that, but
yeah, not really. Well, yeah, winking out of existence, period.
Yeah, that's almost more disturbing.
Yeah.
Did you get the sense that these outcomes were imposed by an external authority or imposed by the entity itself, the person's soul itself?
I have no idea. I was remote viewing, so I was reporting I was describing what I saw.
Okay. All right. That's,
yeah.
We probably go on and on for hours about this. Is there anything else we should add before we go to the next question?
Well, not that I can think of. It became very real to me once I found, got the feedback. The 4 possibilities are there. Like I say, in that sampling, I never saw a ghost. So, but it was a small sampling.